The air crackled with something unspoken, something alive, as I stepped onto the creaky porch of Caleb's house. My heart thudded, not just from the weight of my backpack, but from the way his hazel eyes caught mine, a fleeting spark that burned brighter than the fading Georgia sunset. I wasn't ready for what that night would unravel, for the secrets that would tear through us like wildfire. My name is Elliot Harper, a 19-year-old art student with dreams bigger than the sleepy town of Willow Creek. I'd known Caleb Monroe since we were kids, chasing fireflies and sharing secrets under the old oak tree behind his house. He was the golden boy, quarterback, prom king, the guy everyone loved. But to me, he was more, the one who made my sketches come alive, the one whose laugh felt like home. That summer, after my dorm flooded and I needed a place to crash, Caleb offered his place. Just one night, he said, grinning. It'll be like old times. The Monroe house was a slice of Americana. White picket fence, blooming azaleas, and a porch swing that swayed gently in the evening breeze. Inside, it smelled of cedar and freshly baked cornbread. Caleb's mom, Linda, greeted me with a warm hug, her apron dusted with flour. Elliot, you're too skinny. Stay for dinner, she insisted, her southern drawl wrapping around me like a quilt. But Caleb's dad, Richard, was different. He stood in the doorway, arms crossed, his eyes sharp like a hawk's. Good to see you, Elliot, he said, but his tone was clipped, his smile tight. I brushed it off. Maybe he was just tired. Dinner was a whirlwind of laughter and stories. Caleb's younger sister, Mia, teased him about his latest football fumble, and Linda kept piling mashed potatoes on my plate. Richard was quiet, watching us with an intensity that made my skin prickle. After dessert, Caleb nudged me. Want to hang out back? His voice was low, conspiratorial, and my stomach flipped. I nodded, following him to the backyard where the oak tree loomed, its branches heavy with memories. We sat on the porch swing, the night wrapping around us like a velvet curtain. Fireflies blinked in the distance, and the air was thick with the scent of honeysuckle. Caleb leaned closer, his shoulder brushing mine. You ever feel like you're hiding something? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. My breath caught. I'd been hiding plenty, my sketches of him, the way my heart raced when he smiled, the truth I hadn't dared speak. Yeah, I admitted, my voice shaky. All the time. He turned to me, his eyes searching mine. Elliot. But before he could finish, a shadow moved in the window. Richard was watching us, his silhouette stark against the warm glow of the house. My stomach twisted. Caleb didn't notice, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being studied, like specimens under a microscope. Later, in Caleb's room, we sprawled on his bed, flipping through old comics. The room was a time capsule, trophies on the shelf, posters of classic rock bands, a football signed by his high school team. But there was something new, a sketchbook on his desk, one I hadn't seen before. You draw now? I teased, reaching for it. He grabbed my wrist, his touch electric. Not yet, he said, his voice tight. It's personal. I let it go, but curiosity gnawed at me. As midnight approached, Caleb's breathing slowed, his body relaxed beside me. I couldn't sleep, not with the weight of his closeness, not with the memory of Richard's stare. I slipped out of bed, needing air, and wandered downstairs. The house was silent, save for the hum of the fridge. In the living room, I froze. A stack of papers sat on the coffee table, half hidden under a magazine. The top sheet caught my eye, a brochure for something called New Dawn Retreat. The tagline read, Reclaim your path. Find your truth. My heart sank. I'd heard of places like that, conversion camps, cloaked in promises of healing. Why was this in Caleb's house? I flipped through the papers, my hands trembling. There were notes in Richard's handwriting. Caleb's behavior, concerning. Elliot's influence, negative. Plan for summer. My blood ran cold. Was this about us? About what I'd felt growing between Caleb and me? I stuffed the papers back, my mind racing. What was Richard planning? Back in Caleb's room, I couldn't look at him without seeing those words. Caleb's behavior. Negative influence. I wanted to wake him, to ask what he knew, but fear held me back. Instead, I lay there, staring at the ceiling, my heart pounding like a drum. One night at my friend's house was supposed to be simple, a sleepover, a chance to feel close to Caleb again. But now, I was caught in something bigger, something that felt like a trap closing around us both. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the window, but it did nothing to warm the chill in my bones. Caleb was already up, stretching in his worn-out Falcons jersey. "Sleep okay?" he asked, his grin as bright as ever. I forced a smile. "Yeah, fine." But I wasn't fine. I was trembling, not just from the cold, but from the weight of what I'd found. Richard's secret plan was a shadow over us, and I didn't know how to tell Caleb, or if I even should. Breakfast was a blur of pancakes and small talk, but Richard's presence at the head of the table felt like a storm cloud. His eyes flicked between Caleb and me, calculating, unreadable. I wanted to scream, to demand answers about the papers I'd found, but I kept my mouth shut, my fork trembling in my hand. Caleb, oblivious, chatted about the upcoming football season, his voice a lifeline I clung to. But every time Richard looked at me, I felt like I was being dissected. After breakfast, Caleb suggested we head to the local diner for milkshakes, a tradition from our middle school days. I jumped at the chance to escape the house. Willow Creek's main street was a postcard of small-town America, brick storefronts, American flags flapping in the breeze, and the scent of fried dough from the bakery. At the diner, we slid into a red vinyl booth, the jukebox playing an old Springsteen song. Caleb ordered our usual, chocolate for him, strawberry for me. As the waitress walked away, he leaned across the table, his voice low. "You're acting weird, Elliot. What's up?" I wanted to tell him everything. The brochure, the notes, the way his dad's stare made my skin crawl. But the words stuck in my throat. What if I was wrong? What if I ruined everything? Instead, I said, "Just tired. Didn't sleep much." He raised an eyebrow but didn't push. Instead, he reached for my hand under the table, his fingers brushing mine. My heart stuttered. "You sure?" he asked, his voice soft, searching. I nodded, but the warmth of his touch only made the truth heavier. Back at the house, the tension was palpable. Linda was out gardening, and Mia was at a friend's, leaving just us and Richard. He was in his study, the door ajar, and I could hear the low murmur of a phone call. New dawn, yes. I'm sure this summer my stomach churned. I tugged Caleb toward the backyard, desperate to talk where no one could hear. Under the oak tree, I finally spilled it. "I found something last night," I said, my voice shaking. "Papers. About a place called New Dawn. Your dad, I think he's planning something. For you." Caleb's face went pale, his usual confidence crumbling. "What kind of place?" he asked, but I could tell he already knew. I described the brochure, the notes, the words that had haunted me all night. His jaw tightened, and he looked away, his hands balling into fists. "He's been weird lately," he admitted. "Asking me about you. About us." My heart sank. Us. The word hung between us, fragile and electric. "What do you mean, us?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He turned to me, his eyes raw with something I'd never seen before. Fear, maybe, or longing. "Elliot, I've been trying to tell you I'm not like everyone else. I don't want what they want. I want," he trailed off, but his hand found mine, squeezing tight. My pulse raced. This was it. The truth we'd both been dancing around for years. But before I could respond, the back door slammed open. Richard stood there, his face a mask of controlled anger. "Caleb, inside. Now." His voice was ice, and my blood froze. Caleb didn't move, his hand still in mine. "What's going on, Dad?" he asked, his voice steady but edged with defiance. Richard's eyes flicked to our joined hands, and for a moment, I thought he'd explode. Instead, he said, "We need to talk. Alone." Caleb hesitated, then let go of my hand, the loss like a physical ache. "Stay here." he whispered to me before following his father inside. I paced under the oak tree, my mind a whirlwind. What was Richard saying? Was he confronting Caleb about us? About the camp? The thought of Caleb being sent to a place like New Dawn, a place designed to fix him, made my chest tighten. I had to do something, but what? I wasn't family. I was just the friend, the outsider, the one who'd always loved Caleb from the sidelines. Minutes stretched into eternity. When Caleb finally emerged, his face was ashen, his eyes red. "He knows," he said, his voice hollow. "About me. About how I feel." My heart stopped. "What did he say?" I asked, dreading the answer. Caleb swallowed hard. "He's sending me to that camp. New Dawn. He thinks it'll change me." The words hit like a punch. I grabbed his shoulders, desperate. "You don't need to be changed, Caleb. You're perfect. You're—" I stopped, the words "I love you" caught in my throat. But he knew. His eyes met mine, and for a moment, we were the only two people in the world. Then Richard appeared again, his voice sharp. "Elliot, it's time for you to go." I wanted to fight, to scream, but Caleb shook his head, a silent plea. I grabbed my backpack, my heart breaking as I walked away from the house, from him. But I wasn't giving up. Not on Caleb. Not on us. I drove back to my tiny apartment, the radio a blur of static and pop songs that couldn't drown out my thoughts. Caleb's face, pale, broken, haunted me. New Dawn. The name alone made my skin crawl, conjuring images of sterile rooms and forced confessions. I couldn't let Caleb go there. I wouldn't. At home, I threw myself into research. My laptop glowed in the dark as I scoured the internet for information on New Dawn Retreat. The website was polished, all smiling faces and promises of renewal. But the forums told a different story. Survivors described isolation, shame, and tactics that sounded more like torture than therapy. My stomach churned. How could Richard do this to his own son? I thought of Caleb's sketchbook, the one he'd kept hidden. What was in it? Did it hold the truth he was afraid to share? I texted Caleb, my fingers trembling. "We need to talk. Meet me at the oak tree." Midnight. No response. Hours passed, each minute a weight on my chest. I tried calling, but it went straight to voicemail. Was Richard monitoring him? Had he taken his phone? Desperation clawed at me. I grabbed my sketchbook, pouring my fear into frantic lines. A portrait of Caleb, his eyes fierce and alive, the way I needed him to stay. At 11:30, I drove back to Willow Creek, parking a block away from Caleb's house. The neighborhood was silent, the streetlights casting long shadows. I crept through the backyard, the oak tree a dark sentinel against the moonlit sky. Caleb was there, sitting on the ground, his knees drawn up. He looked smaller, fragile, not the confident quarterback I knew. "Elliot," he whispered, standing when he saw me. "You shouldn't be here." "I had to," I said, my voice fierce. "I'm not letting him send you to that place." Caleb's eyes glistened, and he pulled me into a hug, his arms tight around me. For a moment, we just held each other, the world falling away. Then he pulled back, his voice low. "I found the brochure too. After you left." He admitted it. "He thinks I'm broken, that you're making it worse." My heart shattered. "You're not broken," I said, my voice cracking. "You're the best person I know." He looked at me, his eyes searching, and then he kissed me. It was sudden, desperate, his lips warm and soft against mine. My world tilted, every fear and hope colliding in that moment. When we pulled apart, breathless, he whispered, "I've wanted to do that for so long." But the moment was shattered by a flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. "Caleb," Richard's voice boomed. He stormed toward us, his face twisted with rage. "Get away from him." I stepped in front of Caleb, my heart pounding. "Leave him alone," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Richard's eyes narrowed, his voice low and dangerous. "You're the problem, Elliot. You're confusing him. Get out, or I'll call the police." Caleb grabbed my arm, his voice urgent. "Go. I'll handle this." I didn't want to leave, but his eyes begged me to trust him. I ran, my heart racing, the kiss still burning on my lips. Back in my car, I gripped the steering wheel, tears blurring my vision. I had to save Caleb, but how? Richard's threat echoed in my mind, and I knew he wasn't bluffing. The next day, I went to the one person I thought could help, Linda. I found her at the community garden, her hands deep in the soil. "Elliot, what's wrong?" she asked, her brow furrowing as she saw my face. I told her everything. The brochure, Richard's plan, the way he'd looked at us. Her face paled, her hands trembling as she set down her trowel. "I had no idea," she whispered. "He's been distant, but this?" She promised to talk to Richard, to stop him, but I could see the doubt in her eyes. Richard was stubborn, set in his ways. Would she be enough? I spent the day planning, researching legal options, local organizations, anything that could help. I found a group called Safe Haven, a nonprofit that supported queer youth. I called their hotline, my voice shaking as I explained Caleb's situation. The woman on the line was kind but firm. "If he's over 18, he can leave." I didn't hear from Caleb for 2 days. Every unanswered text, every silent hour, felt like a knife twisting in my chest. I drove by his house, but the curtains were drawn, the driveway empty. I was losing him, not just to Richard's plan, but to the fear that had always kept us apart. I couldn't sit still. I went back to Safe Haven's website, filling out forms, gathering resources. If Caleb wanted to escape, I'd be ready. On the third day, my phone buzzed. A text from Caleb, "Meet me at the diner. 8 p.m. Don't tell anyone." My heart leaped. I arrived early, the diner's neon sign buzzing in the dusk. Caleb slid into the booth across from me, his face drawn, a bruise on his cheek. "What happened?" I asked, reaching for him. He pulled away, his eyes darting around. "Dad and I fought." "He's serious, Elliot. He's booked the camp. I leave in a week." "A week?" The word hit like a sledgehammer. "You don't have to go," I said, my voice fierce. "You're 19. You can leave. Safe Haven, they can help." "I can help." Caleb's eyes softened, but there was a hardness there too, a resolve I hadn't seen before. "I know," he said. "I've been thinking about it. But I'm scared. This is my family, my home." I wanted to shake him, to make him see that he deserved better, but I just took his hand. "You're my home," I said, the words spilling out before I could stop them. He squeezed my hand, his eyes glistening. "I found your sketch," he said softly. "The one you did of me. In my sketchbook." My face burned. I'd slipped it in there months ago, a drawing of him laughing under the oak tree. My heart poured onto the page. "It's how I knew," he continued, "that you felt it too." My breath caught. He'd known, all this time, and he'd felt the same. We made a plan. Safe Haven had a shelter nearby, a place Caleb could stay while he figured things out. I'd drive him there, help him start over. But we had to move fast, before Richard could stop us. As we left the diner, Caleb pulled me into the alley, kissing me again, this time slower, deeper, like he was memorizing me. "I'm ready," he whispered. "For us." But when we got to my car, Richard was there, leaning against it, his arms crossed. My heart stopped. "Going somewhere?" he asked, his voice calm but deadly. Caleb froze, his hand tightening in mine. "Dad, I'm not going to that camp," he said, his voice shaking but firm. Richard's eyes darkened. "You don't get to choose, son. This is for your own good." He stepped closer, and I saw the glint of a car key in his hand, like he was ready to drag Caleb away. I stepped between them, my heart pounding. "He's not going anywhere with you," I said, my voice louder than I expected. Richard laughed, a cold, bitter sound. "You think you can stop me, Elliot? You're nothing." A confused kid leading my son astray. His words stung, but I stood my ground. "He's not confused. He's himself. And I love him." The words were out before I could stop them, raw and true. Caleb's breath hitched, and for a moment, Richard faltered. Then chaos erupted. Richard lunged for Caleb, but I pushed him back, my hands shaking. Caleb grabbed my arm, pulling me toward the car. "Go," he yelled. We scrambled inside, my hands fumbling with the keys. Richard pounded on the window, shouting, but I hit the gas, tires screeching as we sped away. In the rearview mirror, I saw him standing there, a shadow shrinking in the distance. We drove in silence, the weight of what we'd done settling over us. Caleb's hand found mine, his fingers trembling. "Thank you," he whispered. I glanced at him, his face lit by the dashboard glow, and I knew I'd do it all again. For him. For us. The Safe Haven shelter was a modest house on the edge of town, its porch light a beacon in the dark. Inside, a woman named Sarah welcomed us, her voice kind but firm. She gave Caleb a room, a list of resources, and a promise that he'd be safe. As we sat on the couch, Caleb's head on my shoulder, I felt the weight of the night lift, just a little. We'd made it. For now. The next morning, Caleb met with a counselor while I waited outside, sketching the shelter's garden to calm my nerves. My phone buzzed. "Linda." "Elliot, where's Caleb?" she asked, her voice frantic. I told her the truth, my heart pounding. There was a long pause. Then, "I'm coming to see him." When she arrived, her eyes were red, her hands clutching a photo of Caleb as a kid. "I didn't know," she said, tears falling. "I should have stopped Richard." Caleb hugged her, and for the first time, I saw hope in his eyes. Days turned into weeks. Caleb stayed at Safe Haven, attending group sessions, finding his footing. I visited every day, bringing my sketchbook, drawing him in moments of quiet strength. One afternoon, he showed me his own sketches, pages filled with images of US, of the oak tree, of a future he was starting to believe in. "I want this," he said, pointing to a drawing of us holding hands. "With you." Richard didn't give up easily. He called, left messages, even showed up at the shelter once, but Sarah and the staff kept him at bay. Linda filed for divorce, unable to forgive what he'd planned. Slowly, Caleb rebuilt his life, piece by piece. He got a job at the diner, enrolled in community college, and started therapy. I was there through it all, my love for him growing stronger with every step. One evening, we returned to the oak tree, the place where it all began. The air was cool, the fireflies dancing like they had that first night. Caleb took my hand, his smile brighter than I'd ever seen. "I was scared," he said. "Not just of Dad, but of myself, of what I felt for you. But I'm not scared anymore." He kissed me, soft and sure, and I knew we'd made it through the storm. That night at Caleb's house had changed everything. It had torn us apart, forced us to face truths we'd hidden, and shown us the cost of love in a world that didn't always understand. But it had also brought us together, stronger, braver. Richard's secret plan had left me trembling, not with fear, but with the fierce determination to protect what mattered most. Caleb was my home, my heart, and no one, not his father, not the world, could take that away. As we sat under the oak tree, the stars above us, I realized something. Love wasn't just the spark between us, the stolen kisses, the whispered truths. It was the fight, the choice to stand together, to build a life from the ashes of fear. And in that moment, with Caleb's hand in mine, I knew we'd won.